Let's get fishing, ladies. I'm Sandy Roberts, and today we're going to go over basic fishing. You know, it occurred to me, my sister lives in Hawaii, and she wanted to start fishing. And it occurred to me that a lot of things that I was talking about that I took for granted that she understood, she simply did not understand. And she asked me to start doing little videos on basic things that we can do to start fishing. So we're going to start from the very beginning, and we're going to talk about what do we need to start fishing. So basically, we're going to need a rod and a reel. Now today, I have selected a spinning rod and a spinning reel. And the reason I've selected this setup is because it's an easier setup to use than, say, a bait casting rod. Bait casting rod's going to require a little bit different casting. It's going to be your next rod to get. But today we're going to start with a spinning rod. So we're going to have our rod and reel. We need line. Got right here some line. We're going to need bait. And we're going to need a hook. Now in this particular instance, we're going to use a really easy hook. This is a EWG, which means extra wide gap worm hook. Even thinking of things like EWG, I don't know if my sister would have understood what I was talking about if I had said use an EWG hook. So it's an extra wide gap hook, and it's going to allow the Senko to be put on the hook just perfectly and swim just perfectly. So we're going to have these items to fish. The other things we're going to need is we're going to need a pair of scissors or nippers. I use both. So you definitely are going to need a pair of scissors or nippers. And you're going to need a pair of pliers or a pair of forceps. Now these are going to be mostly for getting the hook out of the fish. So you're going to need those items. So let's talk about, we're going to go fishing. Now what do we need to do? Well, when we're picking a bait, this particular bait here, it's a Senko, and this is called Texas rig, the way this is hooked. But what we've got to think about is, what are we fishing for? Are we fishing for trout? Are we targeting walleye? Are we going after bass? Are we fishing in salt water? Are we fishing off of a pier? Are we fishing on a moving river? These things all go into the factors of how we're going to fish and what kind of baits we're going to be fishing with. Once again, this particular setup is a very basic setup for fishing for bass, but when you are selecting a bait, you do need to think about where and what you're going to be fishing for. In addition, some places that you fish are going to be marked artificial flies and lures only. What that means is the most basic setup of using a bobber with a hook below it and a wiggly worm on the hook, what that would mean is that particular setup would not be allowed if it said artificial flies and lures only. You would only be allowed to use lures, soft plastics, anything that's artificial. So anything that moves or wiggles that's alive, you would not be able to use. Also, you need to consider the areas that you're fishing. They're very specific. Sometimes in Colorado, we have areas that say barbless hooks only, which means the barb that would be on that hook there, right there, the thing that would really catch onto you or the fish, that would not be allowed. So you would need to take the barb and you would need to either punch the barb down, or you would need to have a hook that did not have a barb at all. So you do need to be aware of your state regulations. Now, Colorado Department of Wildlife is online, and you can get all kinds of rules and regulations specifically for fishing Colorado and the areas that you fish. Also, any of the other states that have DOW also will be listed on the internet. So when you're fishing a particular lake, river, pond, whatever it is, make sure you've checked out the particular fishing regulations for that area. Be aware, fishing regulations do differ based on where you're fishing. In other words, the fishing regulations in Colorado, for example, are not the same in every single location that we fish. So once you have that already, you'll be ready to fish. But there are items, these are just the basic items that you need to fish, but there are items that I really like to have that aren't essential, but in my mind they're essential. I think they're needed, but you could actually fish and not have a net. But I myself, I like to have a net. Now this particular one has a rubber net. This net is going to be very fish friendly. The thing is, when you're using a net and you're not grabbing the fish with your hands, you're keeping the fish slime on the fish. You're saying, what do you mean, Sandy, fish slime? Okay, well, so fish all have a protective slime coat on them. If we touch that fish and we haven't got our hands wet and we're not using a proper net, there's a good possibility that in holding the fish and touching the fish and taking the fish off the hook, we can actually remove the slime coat from the fish, and that could potentially kill the fish. Most of the fishing that Clay and I do is catch and release. So we catch the fish and we release it. So we want to make sure the fish is harmed the least way possible. So let's talk about not harming yourself. So let's talk about things that you might need when you're fishing. How about a good pair of sunglasses? So, sunglasses are a really good item to have. I would suggest you always have sunglasses on. Yes, they're not needed, but for safety, they really are. If the hook should come back and hit you in the eye, you're going to be protected by your sunglasses. In addition, if you're fishing with someone else and the hook should hit you in the eye, you're going to be protected with your sunglasses. But when you get your glasses for fishing, make sure you get polarized fishing glasses. I'll tell you what, when I first started fishing with Clay, I had on some really cool fashion sunglasses. They were not polarized, and Clay kept talking about a beaver that was in the pond we were fishing, and I could not see the beaver. He was under the water. Clay quickly gave me his sunglasses, which were polarized. I put them on, and I realized, wow, I can actually see through the water. So there's a big difference in wearing a good pair of polarized sunglasses versus wearing a pair of sunglasses that are not polarized. So definitely get polarized sunglasses. Also, I really like to have on sun gloves, and I wear them all the time. I don't like getting the back of my hand burned, and they can really get burned if you don't have on sun gloves. Sun gloves anymore are made light, they're washable, they feel like they're part of your hand, so wear sun gloves. The other thing too, I would say, wear a brimmed hat. A brimmed hat is great. It keeps the shadows, it keeps the sun off of you. It shadows your face a little so that it protects you. Wear a brimmed hat. In addition, if a lure should be flying towards you again, you'll have the protection from the brim of your hat and your sunglasses, so wear a brimmed hat. Also, for safety, I like to wear a buff so that I pull it up over my face. It goes, you put it on and then you pull it up and it goes like this. Now, in this day and time of how we're fishing, these little buffs are considered basically a mask, so we are allowed to wear these and prevent ourselves from coughing or sneezing on somebody by wearing a buff. Also, I'd like to say, and I don't have it here at the table, but I definitely would recommend for safety that you have a life jacket and definitely a whistle so that you can alert somebody if you get into trouble. A whistle is a really good thing to always have on you. If you have a problem, blow the whistle. Now, finally, I'd like to end with, I like to have a bag to put all my stuff in. All my items are in here. I put my bait trays in it. I load them up, lures, hooks, baits. I put them in the bag. I have my scissors, my pliers, everything I keep in there, my fishing line, and that bag is ready to go. Now that particular bag I use, that goes directly to my kayak. When I get home, I reload everything and it's ready to go. So, let's get on the water, ladies. I'm Sandy Roberts, and we'll be fishing soon.